Charlotte, I had a blast with you tonight.
Me too, Timmy.
At the bowling alley and then ice cream afterwards.
Yeah.
It was great. The hand starts slipping down a little bit.
Oh no! Beware! He might start touching your lower back.
What's up, guys? How you doing? I'm Paul.
I'm Morgan.
And this is...
The Paul
and Morgan, the Paul and Morgan Show.
It has been a while since I've heard that jingle. I actually forgot how annoying it was. It's almost as annoying as...
I'll take you to the animal...
Not quite that annoying yet. What's up, guys? Hopefully we're all having a good day so far, but if you're not, I really don't think Paul and Morgan are going to improve it. Just click off the video. Well, hold on. Click subscribe, and then the bell icon, and then click off the video. Just run away. Just escape. Reason being, I made a tweet last night that said, "Make me suffer. Suggest a Paul and Morgan video that I should respond to. Pick something that will make my brain bleed." And aside from a multitude of tweets talking about my possible masochism, which... maybe. Orla Serif came in with the Paul and Morgan hugging video, so I guess that's what I'm doing today. But before we engage in that kind of suffering, let's go ahead and get into fan art. First we have a murderous nun Suris, which was featured in the Yandere video by Bumblin' Bee. And then we have a Purchase Dilders Pumpkin Suris by Lascara. It also happens to have the ddlgplayground.com code in it as well, so, like, if you need Dilders. And then, of course, we have a Goth Suris by Leth. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, and let's go ahead and get right into the pain and brain hemorrhaging.
So, man, we are on it, dude. We are made for each other, babe. Today's video is going to be the first episode in a series. The series is called Boundaries in Christian Dating.
A series, you say? Okay, well, time to go. But all things considered, I do recognize that this is an older Paul and Morgan video, so of course there's more to it. I don't even have to wait for the suffering.
Today's video is going to be titled, It's Only Hugging. It's going to be on hugging and touching. Tomorrow's video is going to be...
kissing before marriage.
Such a good topic. And Friday's video will be on having sex before marriage. Is that a good idea?
Well, as much as I'd like to talk about those gigantic-brained ideas, I actually want to comment on something that's a little more disturbing. Do you notice how in this episode from 3 years ago that Morgan looks a lot more lucid than she does in recent episodes? I've been getting comments on my videos saying that apparently there's actually been a bit of a thing where people think that Morgan goes into these videos drunk or drugged, or I don't know. I have no way of actually knowing, but I didn't really notice that kind of change until I went back and watched this video from 3 years ago where she looks like she's actually got more energy and personality than in her more current showings.
Alright, let's just jump right into it, babe. Why did we decide to put a whole video for hugging, babe? Just start us off.
Well, let's start off with saying that when Paul and I first met, Paul was very, like, conservative, and I was like, hug me, hug me.
I went in for the high five. It was high fives and side hugs. We get to look back on it now, and we have a clearer picture of, you know, what was...
And I have a better understanding of where he was coming from, and I am more on his side now than I was. But I still am more laid back, I think, maybe. I don't know.
So there you go. We might be seeing things a little bit differently, but overall we're on the same page. You meet someone you like, and you start dating, okay?
Yes.
You go on that first date. How do you close it? Oh, hugging is fine. You go in, you give them a nice big front hug. It was great seeing you today, Charlotte.
Okay, we're in agreement thus far.
Date number 2 goes around. It goes well. Good seeing you again, Charlotte. You pull them in closer. It lasts longer.
Generally speaking, as people get more comfortable with one another, physical touching becomes less taboo, yeah.
And then you're this close to the person's face.
And? I've been that close to people's faces when taking selfies with them.
Date number 3. Charlotte, I had a blast with you tonight.
Me too, Timmy.
At the bowling alley and then ice cream afterwards.
Yeah.
It was great. The hand starts slipping down a little bit.
Yes, Paul, that can happen, and it's because as people date and get more comfortable being physical with one another, generally we have a tendency to test boundaries and see, hey, is this okay now? Is this a thing I can do? Is this okay? Do you consent to this? As human beings, as we get more comfortable with people, we either show them more of ourselves or we start testing the boundaries of what is and isn't acceptable within a given group. This is completely normal and natural behavior. This happens in your friend group when you start using more humor that you might not have otherwise used once you get a feel for what the room is like. And this happens in dating as you get an idea for what the physical boundaries of your partner might be.
Do you guys, as funny as we are,
If you guys are considered funny, then they're right. Comedy's dead.
do you guys see what I'm saying?
Guys, I know that it sounds crazy to talk about hugging. Like, what? It's just such an innocent thing. And it is. A hug is so innocent, but it leads to other things.
Yes, everything leads to other things. Literally every action you ever take leads to other things. By your argument, people shouldn't be dating either. People shouldn't be doing anything that could possibly lead to sex.
It can.
So, you know, Paul was very, very set on saving sex before marriage.
For
marriage! And he was not going to cross any boundaries that could possibly even give him the thought would put sexual thoughts inside his brain.
Now, while it is funny to hear Paul attempt to argue in favor of the LARPing chaste monk he attempts to be in real life, I do need to point out that sex is something that most people should probably understand by now is perfectly natural and safe to do. It's not a thing that leads to horrible, evil sins. The only real arguments against sex before marriage exist in various holy books, usually monotheistic holy books. When it comes to sex, there are things you discover having sex with people that you might not otherwise discover. One of them is whether or not you and a particular partner are compatible. You can find out through a year of being with a partner sexually that you two just don't click together. And you can find out sometimes, if you weren't raised in an environment that allowed you to explore this any other way, that you aren't even attracted to the sex or gender of your partner, meaning that you guys aren't just not sexually compatible, you guys might not be relationally compatible at all. And saving sex until after marriage means that you're going to have to go through all of the trials and tribulations of either annulment or divorce in order to actually get out of this relationship, one that you have now determined is completely and totally non-functional. These are things that you could have figured out while dating, but you decided that there was that one thing that you just wanted to save for yourself. This is because societally, we have put some kind of strange value on things like virginity, and I don't really understand it. There's nothing wrong with being a virgin, but there's also nothing wrong with having sex, so long as everybody involved is an adult and consents. You would think all of this is basic things that just people understand innately, but no, it's not. It's not how I was raised, and it's not how several people, especially here in the American South, are raised. A lot of people are raised with this, like, demonizing of sex, that it's this horrible thing that you shouldn't do until after you're married to somebody, but like I said, generally speaking, when you save that, there are tons of complications that can happen as a result. Now, this isn't to argue that having sex before marriage can lead to other complications. Sometimes you can get attracted to an otherwise toxic and terrible person strictly because you're having sex with them. But the fact of the matter is, for every one example I can give against the efficacy of marriage before sex, I can give 10 counterexamples on the other side.
And hugging, like, come on, your chest is pressed up against the guy. His hands are on your lower back, getting close to the booty. And ladies, those are precious things in the front and the back.
And guys,
okay?
they should be precious to you as well for later on.
Yeah, and you can actually view those things as precious without withholding things before marriage. As it turns out, love, lust, and every other emotion can come without the magic sheet of paper that marriage entails. Now, this isn't to say that you should have sex before marriage. I'm not arguing that that's the thing that you definitely should do. Everybody's different. Everybody wants to do something different. There are some people who don't want to get married at all because they don't want to deal with the legal ramifications or having the government involved in their sex life. That's a thing. There are people that just don't want to do that. And so my personal response is that everyone should go at whatever pace they feel most comfortable. Not my pace, which may be faster or slower than your pace. Not Paul and Morgan's pace, which is certainly slower than most people's paces. They should go at the pace that operates best for them, both mentally, emotionally, physically, and sexually. All of those things should happen at your pace, because Paul and Morgan aren't you. They can sit here and try to argue that they're giving good Christian dating advice and that they know what it's like to be you, but they don't. I don't know what it's like to be you. So instead of telling you what is or isn't better, I would rather just tell you to do what works best for you. And more importantly, put yourself in a situation where you have the opportunity to find out what's best for you. Like, imagine that you're ace, but you don't know you're ace. You just think in the back of your head, oh, well, it's okay. I may not feel sexual attraction right now, but that's just because I haven't had sex yet. So you find someone, you get married with them, and then you find out that they have a very high libido, and you find out over time you're asexual. You still love this person, they still mean a lot to you, but you might not actually be compatible at all. Or you might have to resort to something else, like, say, polyamory. Things that you might not be ready for. Things that you might not have any intention of doing. But you're locked legally in this relationship now, and you've discovered these things. It's not just that some people find out they're gay after being married. Some people find out that they just don't want to do the sex thing at all.
Yeah, and you need to decide who you're letting press up against you.
I'm not trying to be a crazy, stickler. But guys, this is real stuff, all right? Looking back on it, like Morgan said, I was really conservative. I would have even been more conservative.
And I could see some people watching this being like, wow, Paul, you must have been pretty weak if you couldn't even hug a girl without having a sexual thought. Paul was so strong for the fact that he was not going to cross those lines and stuck to that and had the discipline to not cross lines until he knew that he was ready.
Well, yes, adhering to boundaries and limitations that are set by other people for yourself are an important thing to do, and they are a thing that we learn how to do as we grow up. There's a couple of issues. One, these are boundaries that Paul set up for himself, which is all fine and great for Paul, but when he argues that other people should do that as well because it worked out for him, not everybody's going to be Paul. In fact, I would hope more people aren't going to be Paul. They don't need to actually engage in the same type of limitation that Paul did. Some people might need to put more boundaries up. Some people probably need to put fewer boundaries up. Because at the end of the day, your speed is your speed, not Paul's speed, not Morgan's speed. The other thing that I hold issue with is Morgan's rhetoric here, arguing that, actually, no, Paul was really strong for doing this. It feels as though there's a subtle implication that had Paul given in and had sex or done any of that, then Paul would have been weak. But, again, having sex is a perfectly natural thing to do. It's not weak. There are people who are going to try to shame you for doing anything you do in your life. There are people who are going to shame you for having sex, saying it makes you weak. They're going to shame you for masturbating, saying it makes you weak. There are people who are going to shame you for keeping yourself chaste until marriage and say that that makes you weak because of some religious doctrine. People are going to say that you're weak for anything. I get told I'm weak for having things that I enjoyed from my childhood behind me. But I'm going to keep them up there until I'm about 50, 60, maybe even 70. Because fuck you, that's why.
Some guys think that they're so strong and they're very naive and they just jump into things before they're close to being ready, and they've got to set stronger boundaries for themselves. And girls, we have got to respect those boundaries that the guys put up. I have to say I didn't do the greatest job at respecting the boundaries Paul put up. I didn't understand them. I came from a relationship before that it didn't make sense, so it just didn't make sense to me.
Sure.
But, I tried my best.
She did, and we had to talk through some things and work through some things, and it wasn't super easy to get completely on the same page.
And now you've hit the nail on the head. Morgan's speed was not your speed. Morgan had to dial down to your speed. And if your speed had been faster, she would have had to accommodate to that speed. That's how things work in relationships. Your speeds, the way that you and someone else operate physically, might not be the same when you start, but they might end up converging, or you might find that they can't converge at all. But these things are unique to each individual and unique to each relationship. It's not that you must put up more boundaries, blah, 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 blah. It's that you must find the boundaries that work for you. The reason that relationship advice from people like Paul and Morgan ends up being so toxic is because it's relationship advice tailored to them, and then they're trying to give it essentially vicariously to all of you. But that's not how relationships work. Not all relationships can follow the exact same template and be successful. There are people who are polyamorous who, when stuck in monogamous relationships, cannot thrive. There are people who are monogamous who they enter in poly relationships and cannot thrive. There are people who enter in relationships not realizing they're ace and yet are with a partner with an incredibly high libido and thus are not able to thrive. There are people who enter relationships and realize that they just don't like the person at all and can't thrive. And each of these situations is unique. Each of these situations is going to be different for every individual that enters them. But the relationship that Paul and Morgan have is theirs. So when they give advice from the perspective of their relationship and then try to argue that that's almost universal advice, it ends up being toxic, because not everybody is going to be able to be Paul and Morgan, and honestly, that's probably a good thing.
But Morgan, she wanted to do what was right, and her heart was in the right place. The Bible is cool in this way. In some things it says, Christians resist this, but when it comes to lust and sexual immorality, it says flee. It doesn't say to try to stand up and resist it. I'm going to be strong against this. It says flee.
But now we come to another crux of your issues. When you try to fit your relationship into the mold that the Bible gives you, there are going to be some people who can do that and thrive. But when you try to fit it into that mold and find out that, say, you're gay, and your interpretation of the Bible is that the Bible condemns homosexuality, now it's impossible for you to have a healthy relationship. It is literally against whatever mold you're trying to work it into. You will end up being a square peg. That mold is a round circle, and you're constantly trying to shove it in. But it's not gonna work, because it's not you. You're not Paul and Morgan. You're not the Bible. You're you. You're an individual. The way that sex, the way that relationships, the way that any of this works for you, that's gonna be yours. It's not gonna be theirs. So when somebody tries to argue that this is how the Bible argues it, so therefore you should do it too, no. That might not even be your religion, and how they're arguing things from the Bible might not even be your interpretation of the Bible. And yet, Paul and Morgan will argue that not only is their interpretation 100% true, but that it is a universal truth that everybody should have to follow. There are people who spend decades of their life trying to mold their relationship into something that it's not, and they only end up suffering as a result. People like Paul and Morgan, they push people into that kind of suffering, and they might not even realize it.
When you take this lightly, oh, that's not a big deal at all, look at how many Christians are having sex outside of marriage, and it's got to start somewhere. I think there is a place for physical intimacy as you move towards marriage, but man, I think so many of us have it wrong.
Yep, and I think the list of people getting it wrong start with you. It's not that your relationship model doesn't work and therefore you should never do it. It's that your relationship model is the Paul and Morgan relationship model. It's what you do. And people who look up to you are going to try to emulate that model, because you don't argue that it's a thing unique to you. You argue that that's the universal truth. That's what people should do. That's how they should operate. That leads to people being toxic to themselves. That leads to people not understanding why certain things work. Why does chastity work for Paul? Well, Paul's reasons are going to be Paul's. And when you try chastity, and if it doesn't work for you, you're constantly going to be wondering, why can't you be like Paul? Why can't you be like Paul? Well, it's because you're not Paul. And you don't have to be. Nobody has to be. Only Paul needs to be Paul. At the end of the day, you do you, and nobody's going to do you like you do. I mean, that's also a masturbation joke, but, you know. But now I want to throw the ball into your guys' court. Now I want to figure out, what do you think? Do you think that their relationship model can be healthy? Do you think that it is healthy? Do you think that my advice of finding your own unique relationship model that works for you isn't really the way to go? Let me know in the comment section below. Critique, anything like that, contradictions to what I said, those are all welcome there. It's not an echo chamber. I'd rather it never be. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Also, if there are any other videos that you want me to tackle, please let me know. You can let me know in the comment section. You can let me know over on Reddit at r/Suris. You can let me know in my Discord in the channels that are designated for that kind of stuff. There's a lot of ways in which you can tell me what you want me to do on this channel, what kind of content you want to see. With all that said, it is the end of the video, and I want to thank you guys for watching. It means the world to me that you guys do click on my videos, do share them with friends, and anything else that you do. And it also means more than a ton to me when people become patrons. These are the Patreon slides. If you are a patron of over $20 or more, then you do get one of these slides. So if you do want to support my channel and what I do, and you have the ability to, and please only if you have the ability to, then I can sit here and shake the tip jar, as it were, over on Patreon. You can also become a channel member. That's another way you can do it too. That gives you access to emotes and stuff for live streams, which I've been doing more often on my channel. It does mean a fewer edited uploads, but it also means I get more time to interact with you guys, so I think it's a fair trade. That all said, I don't really have anything else to add here. Thank you guys for watching. As always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.